Hello and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. The show returns after a brief hiatus of a couple of weeks, and a lot has happened in this time. So it's great to be back among you all. I hope you're all doing very well. I hope you didn't miss me too much. So let's see who all is there on the live stream. All right, let's see who all is there. Let me see. I can see Swayam, Anvit, KPHGG, Beato 134, Ritvik Acharya, Inia, by Manzil, Mr. Mauritius, Mr. Maurice, Bharat Extreme, Alok Bhatt, Kumar Kanishk, Khushi Sharma, Dheeraj, Disagkotri, sorry, I can't pronounce that. Summit Statement, Api Himalaya Chand, Geopolitical Dube, hello, Saket Katari, Niharika Tathagat, Aviroy, Shagun Chopra, Bojack Horseman, Dr. Atul, Ramesh Murugaya, Deepak Jangid, Threat Ripper, Dr. Suryakant Dagar, hello, Utkarsh, ZIJ, Abhi Gaikwad, Harman Veer, Sachin Mahajan, Priyank Patel, X Mas, Y Mas, Z Mas, Ashish Vishwakarma, Saket Katari, Midnight Stalker, Apni Rasoi, Rashmi Rekha Singh, Chaitanya B, Dungar Singh Chauhan, hello. Sobhagya Das, Tripti Mishra, Jeel Chandarana, yes. Prakash Bhatia, Roshan Jha, Netizen, Raghuveer Solanki, Random Skull, Rakshit Mishra, and lots of other people. Anonymous, Imran Naimi, Geopolitical Dube, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, Shagun Chopra, hello from Akashwani, hello. Jack, okay, very good. Aditya Anand, Sushant Gurjar, Suraj, and everybody else. Okay, I'm going to stop there. Otherwise, it's going to go on forever. But yes, hello. Welcome to all of you. So, like I said, a lot has happened. A tremendous amount of stuff has happened. I just go away for a couple of weeks, and so much happens. Donald Trump almost gets taken out. 1963. Those of you who have watched my previous live streams will remember that I have said multiple times that there is a chance, there's a possibility that Donald Trump would get 1963. In case you don't know what 1963, it's the year that John F. Kennedy was taken out uh, by an unknown shooter allegedly. So I have said this multiple times that it could happen, and it almost happens. He was lucky. He was really lucky that he didn't die. And then there's a resumption of the Israel Iran thing, yeah, and so much more. Someone's saying that I look good in short hair. Well, I still have long hair, by the way. But all right, thank you. So much has happened. Okay, so please ask me your questions. So the Paris Olympics are going on. Very interesting, weird Olympics are going on, and so much more. So please go ahead, ask me your questions, and let's take some questions. Come on. So there's a question by Somi Jain who said, "You said Trump won't come back, but if he will, then it will prove that deep state does not exist, right? As they don't want him to come back." Well, yeah, I've been asked this question many times whether I believe that Donald Trump will win this election, the 2024 election. And I've said multiple times that I don't think he's going to win. And I still believe that he won't win because everyone's after him. Okay, he's an outsider. He's a threat to the deep establishment. He's a threat to all the what we call the ancien regime, the existing entrenched powers, and they won't allow him to return. See, the 2020 elections were essentially, well, whether you like it or not, they were rigged. Okay, and it's gonna be much worse this year. And look, they have brought in Kamala. Kamala is now the presidential candidate from the Democratic side. Well, where's the democracy in this? If the incumbent president decides not to run for re-election, then there should be a round of primaries, right? In which the Democrats can vote for their candidate, and then that's how the next candidate is supposed to be selected or elected. But in this case, she's just been handpicked. For example, the Republicans had their primaries, and Donald Trump emerged as the most popular candidate. So the same should have happened among the Democrats. Didn't happen. Where's the democracy in the US? So, I still don't think Donald Trump will win this election. I think it's very unlikely, highly unlikely. He clearly is the most popular candidate, And if there's a free and fair election, he will wipe the floor with Kamala Harris. But I don't think it's going to happen. He still could get 1963. They may try it again. So the deep state exists. On look, you can never prove or disprove the existence or non-existence of the deep state. But anybody who has any understanding of history and who has studied the way the United States actually operates, the way it runs, etc., will understand that there is an extra democratic, extra constitutional center of power somewhere in the US. Maybe it's within the US, maybe it's outside, maybe it's distributed, maybe it's concentrated. We will not get into those things. But I think everybody today understands that the deep state exists, and they are that's the shadowy bunch of individuals who actually rules the United States. And the president is just meant to, divert people's attention away from where the real power lies. Uh, in case you have read that book, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, well, Douglas Adams speaks about precisely that when he refers to Zaphod Beeblebrox. Anyway, um, okay, okay. Here's another question about the same thing. Off says, Trump's assassination attempt, was it the CIA? Was it China? Was it the Democrats? Who was it? Look, the Chinese are not really, I would say, capable of taking out somebody who's running for US president. And even if they perhaps may be capable, in case they are, why would they do that? They would stand to risk too much. I don't think the Chinese are involved. I don't think the Russians are involved. Putin would want Mr. Trump to come back to power. But so why would he want to take Mr. Trump out? Is it the Democrats? Do we have any evidence that the Democrats are involved? We know that this attempt at assassinating Trump, I mean, there were glaring security lapses, horrible security lapses, multiple lapses. I mean, that guy, the shooter, people had spotted him, I don't know, 20, 30, 50 minutes before he took his shot. And people had been alerting the cops and the Secret Service and whatnot. And the guy was on this roof, and the building under the roof, there was Secret Service in there. So how on earth did they not discover this guy there? And that was the best firing angle. If you look at the geography of the region, of the place, of the spot. So it looks like the Secret Service wanted this to happen, or they were under orders to allow this to happen. That's what it looks like. Now, the Secret Service isn't run by the Democrats. Okay, the Secret Service is, well, it's part of the US government, and it comes, I'm not sure what it comes under, but it essentially comes under the deep state. So, yeah, I don't know. Look, I can only speculate who could have been behind this. And I would speculate that it's the unelected powers that actually rule the United States that do not want Mr. Trump to come back to power, and probably they may have been behind this. Probably, possibly, perhaps. The same way they could have possibly been behind what happened to Mr. Kennedy. So yeah, one can only speculate because you don't really have any evidence of anything. Oh, really? RMS says, what do you think about the new parliament roof leak? I wasn't aware of this. Is the new parliament's roof leaking? That if that's the case, then it's disappointing, truly disappointing. Shouldn't happen. But what can I say? This is India. We have different standards compared to the rest of the world. We still have better standards than the French, apparently. I mean, we had to. I just heard 5 minutes before this live stream started that the government of India had to send 400 or 40 air conditioners to France to take care of our athletes there, because the French don't have air conditioners apparently. Well, anyway. Guru Prasad says, will there be any changes in diplomacy if an opposition party comes to power in India? Definitely. Our foreign policy will take a 180-degree U-turn. 180, right? Not 360. 360 is you come back to the same place. If an opposition party or a coalition of opposition parties comes to power in India, it's going to be a complete U-turn in terms of foreign policy. Everything that Mr. Modi and his government have been trying to do the past 10 years will be undone in a matter of weeks. So yeah, and India's diplomacy will harken back to the old days in which we will have these craven, pusillanimous, cowardly um, positions in foreign policy. We have no aspiration of being a great power. We are happy with mediocrity, like one of our prime ministers had said in not too long ago. Not Mr. Modi, someone before him. So yeah, total change in diplomacy will happen. Dr. Atul says, I guess you're aware of the landslide situation in Wayanad, Kerala. Over 400 people are dead. Ridiculous, terrible. What are the measures to avoid these? Is the Western Ghats prone to these? That's interesting. That's an interesting question. Uh, I think someone asked me this today, not here, but offline. The same thing about the Western Ghats. So I've heard about the landslide situation in Wayanad. I've not seen any images. I've not really looked into the matter. It's not something that it's a terrible tragedy, obviously. Uh, so yes, I've heard about it. 400 plus people dead. That's a disaster. And I wonder who's responsible for this. I would say it's the state government that's responsible for this. Uh, Obviously, the state government has to take responsibility when something happens within your state because the state is it's under your jurisdiction. Uh, so yeah, it's terrible. I'm not sure why it's happened, how it's happened. I don't know about the geography in detail of that particular specific place within southern India. So I can't answer as to why this happened, how it happened. But the good question is this one: what are the measures to avoid landslides? So let's understand the physics. Let's say the dynamics, mechanics of landslides. A landslide is when a significant amount of soil it slides downhill from a hill or a mountain, and it brings down rock and trees and whatnot, and it causes devastation downstream, downhill. Now, why do landslides happen and how do they happen? They typically happen when the soil is not strongly anchored to the mountain. I mean, there's a gradient, there's a precipice, okay, there's a certain angle at which the mountain comes down, and if the soil is not properly anchored, then it can become loose and it can come down, typically when it rains, etc., or if it snows. But we're talking about India, so mainly we're talking about rain. And when does it happen that the soil is not firmly anchored? That happens when you have deforestation. Because generally, when it comes to most parts of India, we have hills and mountains which are covered by forests, and the trees, they anchor the soil firmly and properly so that it doesn't go down when it rains. So when you have deforestation, you're going to have landslides. Or landslides also occur because of earthquakes, etc., but it's mainly because of deforestation. And some landslides are just natural, even if you have forests and even if you have trees and vegetation. So it's in some cases a landslide may still happen. But what can you do to avoid landslides, to prevent landslides? Ensure that you have proper forest cover wherever you have hills and mountains. Okay. So yeah, that's what you need to do. You need to ensure that there is no deforestation. You need to ensure that builders and whoever it is don't go and start digging and cutting into the mountains and hills with their bulldozers, because that's gonna, promise you, that's gonna cause landslides long term. So we need to stop tampering with nature. We need to stop interfering with nature. You have hills, you have mountains, you let them be. You don't go and mess around with them. Don't construct too many dams, etc. Too many. I mean, some dams obviously we need, but we have to be judicious in the manner in which we construct dams, how large the dams are, and how many dams we can construct. For example, if you construct 500 dams in a mountainous state, any hypothetical mountainous state, then you're gonna have landslides and earthquakes and whatnot. So you gotta do it judiciously. We do need infrastructure, but we have to do it the right way. So that's the thing. Don't cut down forests. Don't uh, Deforestation is one of the factors, very strong factor, very major factor. The other factor is when you cut into the mountains to to extract rock and rubble and whatnot for construction materials and so on and so forth. In which case, you're going to have landslides, and obviously, too many dams and all that stuff can also cause landslides. Are the Western Ghats prone to landslides? Not so much, not as much as other parts of it. The Western Ghats are extremely ancient mountains, very very ancient mountain range. Where's the map? Where's the map, my friends? Let's find the map. So, where's the Western Ghats? Where are the Western Ghats? So, it's a mountain range that extends all the way essentially from Gujarat, southern Gujarat, all the way down to southern India, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, etc. It's a very ancient mountain range, hundreds of millions of years old. And I remember many years ago, I had taken a train journey. Many years ago, like close to 2 decades ago, I had taken a train journey once from Mumbai to Chennai. And the train journey took 2 days. 2 days. And it was fun for me. I was looking out the window and I could see the hills and the mountains, and it was fascinating to see the geology. You could see the way it was stratified and all. You could see that these mountains, these hills, had once been obviously horizontal. The strata had once been horizontal, but now they were at an angle to the surface of the earth and all. So that talks about very violent, very powerful geological processes that have happened in India over time, especially when India was part of Africa. Then it went over the Réunion hotspot and eventually slammed into Eurasia. So all of that history is still visible in the Western Ghats. So the Western Ghats are extremely dense and hard rock, and they are less prone to landslides. But yeah, you mess around with them, there also you'll have landslides. Okay, next question. Death Killer 43. Thoughts on India doing poorly in Olympics and India winning the 2020 World Cup, T20 World Cup. How many medals has India won thus far? I think there's this lady, she's a shooter. She has won 2 bronze medals, and someone else has won another medal, another bronze medal. Sindhu went out, I believe, in badminton. Uh, Lakshya Sen or somebody was doing well in badminton, I remember. Where were our medal hopes? I'm not sure if what's the guy? His name, the javelin throw guy. Uh, he's tremendous. He's terrific. So I'm not sure if he has competed yet. I think there's a gold medal chance there. I'm not sure about boxing and wrestling, etc. What happened there? I'm not sure. So yeah, it's just the way it is. I'll tell you what. If you look at the amount of money and resources the Chinese government invests in sporting activities, then we are not even 100th of that. We are somewhere around 1% of that. That's how little our government prioritizes sport. And now, why would a nation like China spend hundreds of millions, or no, I would say billions of dollars in its sporting infrastructure, in investing that much money in its athletes? Why would China do that? Because the Chinese government cares about prestige, the nation's image, which is obviously important. And nothing unifies a nation like success. When you have your athletes succeeding everywhere, that unifies the nation. That gives you this feeling of euphoria and binds everybody together. That's what every nation needs. That's why the USSR is to invest so much in sports. That's why various European nations invest so much in sport. That's why China invests so much in sport. The government of India has no understanding or no interest in this. They simply don't care about national prestige. I mean, China was investing tremendous amounts of money in sport when its GDP was at the same level as India's. Okay, so it's not like China started doing this when they became a more powerful economy. They've been doing this for the past 20, 30 years, 30 years at least. I think they went on a moratorium from the Olympics in the 1980s. They said that we will not participate in the Olympics for like 4 or 8 years, and we're gonna spend that time developing our infrastructure and investing in our athletes, and then we're gonna come back on the global stage and take the world by storm. And they did that. So it's in the 80s, 90s that they were doing this. And today in India, the government of India has absolutely no interest in this. The government of India has no interest in education, in culture, in sports. We just wallow in mediocrity. I promise you this. if you look at the amount of money the Chinese are investing in their sports, and if the same amount of money is made available to Indian athletes in Indian sporting infrastructure, then give India just 5 years and we'll be defeating the Chinese and taking the world by storm. We have superior, at least compared to China, superior genetics. But our leadership, our government simply doesn't have any interest in this. The nation's image, the national prestige, all of that, they simply don't care about it. So what can I say? What can I say? It's tremendously disappointing. We have so much potential, but the potential is just squandered. We have ministries of this and that and whatnot. What do those ministries do? What do those ministries do? I really wonder why those ministries even exist. T20 World Cup. Well, I'm glad we won that. Whom did we defeat in the final match? I think I saw some part of. Oh yeah, South Africa, obviously. Yeah, the catch, Surya Kumar. It was good to see. It was good to see. So yeah, I was glad that happened. But I would like to see India succeed in other sporting disciplines as well. All right. Excuse me. Summit statement says, I am from Nepal and I strongly feel Indian nationalism. But why do I struggle to see people from Sindh, Gandhar, and Bengal as my own? It's disappointing that we rival a nation once our own. Yeah, it's interesting, right? You are from Nepal, but you strongly feel the sense of Indian nationalism. You feel the civilizational nationalism, so to say. You know, we are all part of the same civilization. We are separate nations today, but we are part of the same civilization. Why do you struggle to see people from Sindh, Gandhar, Bengal as your own? Well, mostly Bengal today, the majority of the population is Bangladesh, right? If you compare the population of West Bengal with Bangladesh, Bangladesh has the larger population, and so maybe that's one of the reasons, because Bangladesh now has a different culture from our culture, obviously, right? And the same happens when it comes to Sindh and Gandhar. Sindh and Gandhar, well, these were our lands, our ancestral lands, but they're gone now, and our culture, our civilization no longer exists there. So it's natural to see to struggle to see those people as your own, because most people believe that it's the affinity that we have with people is because of DNA and blood, but that's not the case. Culture is more important than DNA. Culture is more important than blood. So you will feel more of a sense of connection with somebody who shares your culture as opposed to somebody who shares your blood. Unfortunately, that's how it goes. uh, so yeah, I guess that's why you struggle to see people from these regions as your own, because they no longer see you as your own, as their own, right? The people of Gandhar, they no longer see us Indians, Bharatiya people, as their own. They if you say that we were once the same people, they'll laugh at you. They'll be angry. They'll say, no, 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 we were Jews, we were this, we were that, we were Persians, we were Turks, but we were never Indians. That's what the Pashtuns will say, most of them today. And Sindh, etc. Say same story. So what you feel is this civilizational affinity. We are part of the same civilization, all of us. Those of us who still uh, practice the civilizational values and morality and culture. So I hope that in the future we are once again unified. What's the great dream that many people have? Akhanda Bharat. Well, at least as a civilization, we can be unified. We can remain separate nations. India, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Indonesia, Thailand, Burma, etc. We can remain separate nations, but we should be unified by culture and civilization. At least we should have an open border regime for the civilizationally closed nations. So, like India and Nepal, we have open borders. You don't need a passport or a visa to come into India, and vice versa. You can work in India, you can serve in armed forces. I would like to see be the same kind of thing be extended to Sri Lanka, to Thailand, and other nations with reasonable security precautions, etc. It would be nice to have that. Eventually, Tibet as well. Both of these. Yeah. So today we are fragmented because of the things that happened in the past 1000 years, but 1000 years is not a big deal for us. We are way older than that, and we're going to be around for at least 10,000 years more. If not us individually, then our descendants. So let's do our best to make things better for those who come after us, our descendants. That's what we should do. Geopolitical Dubey says, what will change if Trump becomes president? What will change if Trump becomes president? Nothing much will change. You see, Trump was president from 2016 to 2020. What was he able to achieve in that time period? In that period of time, he did get the Abraham Accords done. He tried his best to bring about peace in Western Asia, Middle East. He tried a lot of things. He tried to build that wall to keep the Mexicans out. That didn't work. So overall, despite all his efforts, despite him really trying his best, he was not allowed to succeed. The entire political establishment stood against him. So, what will change if Trump becomes president now? 2024, let's say he wins the election against all odds. Yeah. What happens? What will change? I think nothing much will change. I think the same thing will happen again. I'll be. I was very surprised that he was not 1963 while he was president, first of all. And there's a high chance that he'll be 1963, that he may be 1963 before the election happens. And let's say he gets elected president. Well, he's got 4 years to be in power or be in office. That might happen. So I don't see much changing if Trump becomes president. They will not allow him to do the things that he wants to do. They won't allow him to achieve his objectives. It's going to be an uphill battle every single day for him. The entire media will go all out against him and so on, unless he has made a deal with the devil. Well, you never know. Okay. Okay. Yash Gohil says, how do you remember such diverse data? And at the same time, how do you understand or comprehend information at the time when you're unable or frustrated with the information? Do I get frustrated with information? I have had so many experiences as a student, especially when I had this costly textbook written by some mediocre author, and that was the official textbook you had to, well, study. And if you did not replicate the answers from that textbook for those paragraphs, then you would not get the right marks and stuff. So you had to just memorize nonsense. It was deeply, deeply frustrating. And you learn nothing from that. It is just an exercise in futility. So those were bad experiences. The Indian education system is ghastly. It's a disaster. And nothing has changed. Nothing is changing. But how do I remember all this diverse data? Well, I read a lot, okay, and I only remember what I find interesting. I have so many books around me, okay. Some of these books I've read like 17 times. Some books I may have read just a few pages. There are some books over here. There are more here, etc. I have read an entire book, which I found interesting at the time. And today, if I try to remember what was there in the book, I may struggle to remember a single thing. So it's not like I remember everything. My brain is not like a sponge. I am very forgetful. I forget like 80-90% of what I read. But I read so much and I have so many interests and I'm so curious about various things that I retain maybe 5% of it. And that's what I speak about. Okay. Yeah, so that's what I say. So my philosophy of reading is, it's perfectly okay if you remember nothing. If the book isn't interesting enough, if it isn't giving you enough value, don't read it. Whatever you read, it's okay to forget it. That way you'll remember what you find interesting. That's how I do it. Mitcha says, I missed you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I am back and now we continue. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I really do. Okay. Anonymous says, could you tell us who a Hindu is? Can anybody who calls himself a Hindu become a Hindu, or are there certain practices one must do? Well, Hindu dharma is very diverse. Yeah, that's the problem. It's so difficult to actually define and delineate the boundaries of what Hindu dharma is and who is a Hindu and who is not. It's so difficult. And everybody has a certain opinion about what a Hindu should be like, what Hinduism, Hindu Dharma is, and what Hindu Dharma is not. So there is no, it is such an ancient, diverse tradition that you simply can't define it. And everybody has a different perception, different perspective. There are so many spiritual and dharmic philosophical paths in Hindu Dharma, and they are all wildly different from each other. I've spoken in the past about the various philosophical schools of thought, Bauddha, Nyaya, Jaina, Mimamsa, Vedanta, Charvaka, etc. They are so different from each other, Sankhya, Yoga, and so on. So different from each other. I mean, Charvaka is atheism, atheistic materialism. Bauddha is, well, it's atheistic, yes, for sure. It doesn't believe in a god. Some people would claim that it doesn't believe in the existence of the soul, and so on and so forth. And so there is so much diversity in what we believe in, and the kind of gods that people worship. Some people have so and so Ishtadev, some people have so and so other Ishtadev, Kuldevis, and so many other things. There are people who have very, you know, nature worshipping traditions, ancestor worshipping traditions, and so on. So everything is allowed within the Dharmic umbrella. It's very hard to define from that perspective who a Hindu is. But I would say that there are certain values that are common in Hindu Dharma. First of all, there is non-violence. So non-violence is preferable. It doesn't mean that you can, if somebody comes to whack you, you just let it happen. No, you have to ensure that non-violence rules, which means you have to destroy those who are violent. So that's also there. Uh, so there are a set of principles, set of values that are common to all the dharmic paths, and I would say that is what Hindu Dharma is. So whether you are, today Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, etc., are all separate religions allegedly, hmm? And that's what we are taught, and now everybody grows up believing that. But if you look at the lifestyle of somebody who identifies as Hindu or Buddhist or Sikh or whatever, or Shinto, for example, or Tengriist, they all have certain set of values that are common. I think those values are what defines you, what makes you a Hindu, I suppose. Okay, let's not talk about Shinto and Tengrism because people will get upset. but yeah, so what are these values? Well, I think I'll have to think about it, otherwise it will take me time to explain over here. Obviously, non-violence is there, non-injury to others, um, and other things as well. So when it comes to Buddhism, Jainism, Hinduism, the lifestyle is very similar, and values are very similar. So that's what makes you a Hindu, I would say. Wokelympics, yeah, it's been quite a show, hasn't it? The Olympics, the most incredible Olympics one has seen. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Praveen Gudaparthi says, "Is the heart attack to Mr. Xi Jinping real? Can we believe China?" Well, there was, I think it was last year or something, then when people were claiming there was a coup in China and Mr. Xi Jinping had been ousted from power by the Chinese military, the People's Liberation Army. Many prominent YouTubers and experts in India were saying this. What happened? There's no coup. And I had said at the time there's no coup. So I don't know. Listen, I haven't seen any credible evidence of a heart attack for Mr. Xi Jinping, or of Mr. Xi Jinping suffering a heart attack. So I would say, listen, let's not speculate right now. Let's bide our time. Let's be patient. Eventually, the truth will come out. That's what I would say. So I don't know. I can, at this point in time, I can neither say yes or no. I don't know what to believe because we don't have sufficient information. So let's be patient, and the truth will come out eventually. Okay. Aryan says, "Do you think the current situation happening with Israel, the US, and Iran and other included states is a master plan of the US to create a war-like situation and postpone the elections?" Interesting question. Interesting question. So let's say there's a war, in West Asia. Okay, let's go to the map. Where is map? We must see map. Okay. So we're talking about West Asia here, what they call the Middle East, Western Asia. So the turmoil obviously is always in this region. Uh, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. This region is where you generally have turmoil, and it's an ever-present factor in the geopolitics of this region. So let's say there is a war. Okay, we don't want a war. Okay, we don't want wars. We want peace. But let's say, unfortunately, there's a war between Iran and Israel. So if there's a war between Iran and Israel, will that cause a postponement of the election, presidential election in the US? I don't think so. I don't think it's going to cause a postponement of the election, presidential election. I don't think so. Uh, of course, we know that this region, the fact that it's always been in turmoil, it's been caused by external players, by great powers. In the past, it was caused by the UK, by England, by the British Empire, and in the 20th century, post Second World War onwards, it's typically been the region has been kept aflame essentially by the West. And when we say the West, we mean NATO. And when we say NATO, I think we all know that we are talking about the US. So the US has kept this region in turmoil. And so the situation that's happening there right now is also, one could say, directly or indirectly caused by the US. The US has been a staunch supporter of Israel, uh, unconditional support. Whatever Israel needs, the US will provide. The US will never condemn anything the Israelis do. I'm not saying that Israelis are doing anything condemnable. I'm not saying that. Okay. What's my perspective in all this? My perspective in what's happening is that we Indians, there is no need for us to take sides whenever somebody is fighting. Let's say nation X and nation Y, X and Y are fighting. There's a conflict. Is it necessary for us Indians to take a side in this matter? Is it necessary? Why is it necessary? It's not necessary. So my position is very clear when it comes to all these conflicts. We are not involved in this. We did not cause the conflict. We don't have a dog in this fight. We don't have a horse in this race. We will urge peace. So I don't think um, the US wants to postpone elections, and it's using this conflict as a pretext. That I don't think so, because there have been wars in the past. That's never caused a postponement of US presidential elections. Um, okay, your views on China and India relationship. China is coming in hard, and the Prime Minister of India hasn't spoken much about this. Look, when it comes to the relationship with China, it's a it's not a good relationship. Uh, we haven't had good relations with China since the 1950s. Okay, when Mr. Nehru allowed the Chinese to take over Tibet, and then they not only took over Tibet, but they captured Indian territory after that. So we haven't had good relations with the Chinese ever since that time. And of late, India has been ramping up its infrastructure building activities, etc., in the border regions with Tibet, which has greatly alarmed the Chinese, and that's why we've had all these clashes the past decade or so. Lots of clashes on the border. We had the Galwan clash; soldiers died on both sides, and we've had other clashes also. Some videos have leaked out, etc. So that's why the relationship isn't good, because India has been ramping up its infrastructure building efforts. Um, Now, what's happening right now? The Chinese are coming in hard. I don't see them coming in hard. What are they doing on the border? There haven't been, as far as we know, any new clashes on the border. Uh, on the other hand, there is talk of the Indian government now allowing Chinese companies to invest in India, to set up manufacturing plants in India, etc. Which kind of, I mean, I would be very cautious over here, but it looks like the relationship could possibly perhaps improve. if both governments are okay with this. And the fact is that the Chinese economy is slowing down. We all know that. The Chinese need, I mean, there's nothing like the Chinese getting access to a gigantic market like India. So that would be great for the Chinese economy. So the Chinese, they need their economy to grow. India needs the Indian economy to grow. So let's postpone the war by 5 years or so. That's the kind of understanding that we are seeing right now. So India and China, as long as they share a border unnaturally, because India and China never had a border for 3,000 years. So as long as that, as long as China is in occupation of Tibet, India and China will never have a normal relationship. Will never be friends. But right now, it looks like the two governments may be in the process of thinking about agreeing to postpone the conflict for another 5 years or something. Because what do we gain from a conflict right now? It's not a win-win thing, it's a lose-lose thing. um, and when it comes to the India-China relationship, the less we speak about it, the better, especially from the high up leadership. So that's why the Prime Minister of India will not comment much about this, and he is justified in not doing that. There's no need to comment about everything. So look, the Prime Minister of India, we should not expect him to be like the great Mr. Ravi Shastri. There's no need to comment, give a live running commentary about everything. Okay, keep quiet. There's no need to speak about everything and voice your opinion about everything. So yeah, that's where we are. Um, Abhishek Kumar says, what are the chances of Iran's success as it plans to attack Israel? Mayuri says, Israel is threatening Iran with war. What are my thoughts? Yeah, so Iran says it wants to attack Israel. That's what one hears in the media, in the news, and Israel is threatening Iran with war. So what has happened? Let's try and unpack what has happened. So there's this guy, the chief of Hamas, who was living in Qatar, right? What's his name? Haniyeh. So this guy, the chief of Hamas, the most powerful leader, the most prominent and powerful leader of Hamas, uh, he goes to Iran. He goes to Tehran to attend the swearing-in ceremony or inauguration ceremony of the new Iranian president, because the previous Iranian president unfortunately died in an aircraft crash, helicopter crash. So there's a new president being inaugurated, and this guy, the Hamas chief, goes to Tehran to attend this, to participate in the ceremony, in that event. Now, Hamas, uh, they operate out of Palestine. Okay, Palestine. I mean, Gaza, etc. Gaza, mainly Gaza, the West Bank, um, the Gaza Strip, essentially, not the West Bank, the Gaza Strip. So they operate out of this, and they are known to be an Iranian proxy. Iran also has proxies in Syria, in Iraq, etc. Iran is a very geopolitically ambitious nation. It it punches way above its weight. It has power projection capabilities, and it uses those power projection capabilities in the region. So Hamas is an Iranian proxy. Now, and Hamas is classified as a terrorist organization, and it does, of course, conduct terrorist activities. So it's a terrorist organization, and it's a proxy of Iran. Now, so lots of people will say that that makes Iran the bad guy, right? But there are many other nations that have used terrorist proxies to further their agenda. For example, the United States funded and financed Pakistani terrorism in India for decades. 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, all the way up to the 2000s. Okay? So, does that make the US a terrorist nation, a terrorist regime? One could make the same argument. So, I would say that look, we have to be very clear about one thing. Okay? Firstly, there is no morality in geopolitics. There is no morality in geopolitics. There's no right or wrong, good or bad in geopolitics. Every nation has a set of national interests, and every nation will pursue those national interests in any way possible. That is simply the rule, the way the game is played. And the more powerful you are, the more you can get away with. And the US is the most powerful, and that's why they're able to get away with essentially everything, whatever they want, including supporting Pakistani terrorists against India and bleeding India for decades. So now Iran is being called a state supporter of terrorism. Okay, whatever. And Hamas obviously is a terrorist organization, no doubt about it. So this guy, the chief of Hamas, goes to Tehran and he is assassinated, allegedly. We have not seen any evidence of the assassination. And the Iranians are claiming that the Zionist regime has carried out the assassination, which means Israel. So they have alleged that Israel carried out the assassination in Tehran. Well, if that is true, that is humiliating for, first of all, for Iran, because Israel comes into your capital city and takes out a guy who a few hours ago was with your president. Okay, in a pinpoint strike. That is humiliating for Iran, if that is true. It also proves that Israel's capabilities are top notch. They can go and do anything anywhere. And it also sends a message to Israel's enemies that no matter who you are, no matter where you are, no matter who is protecting you, we can come and take you out. We can take you out. We can take out your children, your grandchildren, your entire family, which is what they did to Ismail Haniyeh. Okay. So there is that. Okay. That's the message it sends. Now, this guy, Haniyeh, he was the most powerful leader of Hamas. He was the only guy who could unify the various Palestinian political factions. With him gone, the Palestinian political cause is now disunited. It is fragmented, and Hamas also doesn't have any leader who can properly unify Hamas. So that is going to severely impact is Iran's power projection capabilities in the West Bank, sorry, in Gaza, okay, in the vicinity of Israel, which is bad for Iran. So that's what's happening. And this guy, okay, Haniyeh, among all the terrorists, he was a moderate terrorist. What does it mean? It means that despite being a terrorist, he had expressed a view that he was in favor of talks with Israel, and he would perhaps be willing to entertain a ceasefire offer from Israel. So, from that perspective, he was a moderate. Of course, he was a terrorist, but among all the terrorists, he was the moderatest of all the terrorists. Okay. So, now with him gone, what happens is that Hamas is going to take a completely hardline stance. Complete hardline stance. They will definitely reject any offer of negotiations or whatever from Israel if that ever happens. And this alleged assassination of this guy has also bolstered Netanyahu's political standing in Israel. He has been on very shaky political ground. There are corruption cases against him. If he loses, if he has to step down as the leader of Israel, he may go to jail. Okay, and so on. So he is on shaky ground, and this, it elevates his political position. It makes his political future more stable and better. So, from this strengthened political position, Netanyahu can actually now offer a ceasefire to Hamas, and he knows that Hamas will reject it. And that can be the pretext for taking the war or the conflict to the next level. So, that is all that's happening right now. Okay. So, Israel, it may offer a ceasefire, it may go to war with Iran. Iran has already said that they will retaliate in some fashion. Okay, but we have to understand that the two nations, they are about 1,000 kilometers apart. Let's try and measure the distance roughly. Yeah, about 900 kilometers, roughly 1,000 kilometers in distance in a straight line. And how does Iran fight Israel from that distance? How does Iran do that? They could launch another drone strike, a few hundred drones like last time, but the last drone strike was mostly ineffective. Many of the drones were shot down, and those that did indeed hit their targets did not cause any significant damage. They did not take out any high value targets. So overall, it was kind of a failure. Yeah. Well, what about doing that again? Well, that will only make them look even more toothless. The Iranians, they don't have an air force that's capable of bridging flying that 1,000 kilometer distance, taking out targets and coming back. So what does Iran do? They don't have too many options. They will have to use proxies and fight and you know, engage their enemy at a time and a place of their choosing. That's what they would have to do. Um, and Israel can certainly launch airstrikes against Iran. They have a very powerful air force, and they could do that. They will have to overfly Iraq, etc. if they do this. But yeah, the Israelis are certainly capable of doing that. And then obviously there's the nuclear factor. Israel is a non-declared, undeclared nuclear power. They are believed to have about 80 or so, maybe 100 nuclear warheads. By now, Iran possibly could also have become a nuclear power. They may already have, I would imagine, sufficient nuclear fissile material for maybe 5, 10 nuclear warheads. It's possible. So there's also a nuclear dimension here. So there's so much happening, and this is a situation that's fluid. It's a situation that's in progress. One can just hope that it doesn't devolve into an actual war. I mean, first of all, how do you fight a war from 1,000 kilometers apart? That's the first logistical problem. Um, so it will be a long distance war if it does happen. But yeah, the Iranians do have proxies among in Syria, in Gaza, in Yemen as well. So they could cause a lot of problems for Israel, the US, etc. And this could lead to a sudden rise in global oil prices, etc., which would not be good for anybody. Now, what about India? What should our position be in this? See, we Indians are tremendously emotional, and we believe that wherever there's a conflict, we have to take a side. We have to take this side or that side. We have to take a side. Why do we have to take a side? From our perspective, Iran and Israel are both reasonably friendly nations. Neither nation has any special love for India. Okay, despite whatever you may believe, Indians are so unrealistic and so emotional. Neither of these nations, Iran and Israel, has any special love for India, but both are reasonably friendly towards India. So we don't need to take any sides. We should simply urge both nations to calm down and, you know, resolve your differences over the negotiating table, in negotiations through diplomacy. Don't fight. That's what we should say. We don't need to take sides. So yeah, that's my perspective on this. Luna Live says, "What's your opinion on the student protest in Bangladesh?" This is an American regime change operation. Okay, that's what it is. That's what's happening here. The Americans, they have the ability to they have this ability in India as well, as we've seen. Okay, and they have done this in Thailand as well, and many countries, to carry out these color revolutions, regime change operations. And Sheikh Hasina, the leader of Bangladesh, the prime minister, is very pro India, and she has made the astonishing allegation multiple times this year that the Americans they want to carve out a Christian nation. Okay, let's go to the map. They want to carve out a Christian nation out of Bangladesh, India, and Burma. So parts of Bangladesh, parts of Burma, and parts of India, which is Mizoram and Manipur, especially Manipur, will be part of a new Christian nation. And they wanted Sheikh Hasina to agree to this, and she has not agreed. That's why they are doing all this. And the Americans also want an island. Okay, this island here. What is it called? I wonder what it's called. But they want Saint Martin's Island. They want to construct an air force and naval base here from which they can project power over India, and obviously in other parts of this region as well. So Sheikh Hasina has not agreed to this, and that's why the Americans are after her. And these student protests are nothing but that. Okay, they are part of the American pressure tactics, and it's very easy to mislead students. Very easy, especially when their professors are on the US payroll. Okay, and they get all these junkets, etc., to go to the West and give business class tickets and five-star hotel stays, and give a lecture somewhere, and everybody treats you very well. So obviously you'll be pro US. So it's very easy for the Americans to harness student power in any nation They've done this in various parts of the world. They've done it in India. They've done it in Thailand in 2020, 21. They're doing it in Bangladesh now. So it is an attempt to change the regime in Bangladesh. The Americans want the opposition to come to power. The opposition is strongly, strongly anti-India. Okay, virulently anti-India, and the media is making it look like the students are being oppressed by the government of Bangladesh, which is nonsense. So India must stand with Sheikh Hasina. She is a strongly pro-India leader, one of the few pro-India leaders in the Indian subcontinent, and the Americans don't like this. So what the Americans want to do is they want to create a new Pakistan east of India, a new Pakistan, a Christian Pakistan. We already have one Pakistan to our west, okay, and that nation has cut off our historical access to Eurasia. We can no longer connect with Eurasia by road because Pakistan has cut off our access, and so has China. And now, what the Americans will do, they will create a new artificial Christian nation, a new Pakistan in the east of India, in India's far east, which will cut off our access to Southeast Asia. So India will be completely cut off by land with the rest of the world. We will have to go either by air or by sea. And who controls the air? Who controls the sea? It's the Americans. That's what the Americans want to do. And that is why Manipur is burning. Okay? So all of this, what's happening in Manipur, what's happening in Bangladesh, the civil war that's raging in Burma right now, all of this has a geopolitical dimension. These are not, these are all correlated. Okay, that's what's happening. So I hope the government of India will withstand this pressure, and so will Bangladesh. And we need to support Bangladesh in this matter. Okay. Zixer IT says taxes like America, but services like Somalia. So, what are my thoughts? Well, I'm afraid you're right. I'm afraid you're right. We have an extremely convoluted tax regime, multiple layers of taxation, very high, very heavy taxation, which is fine as long as you get the services you're paying for, but you don't get the services you're paying for. So, for example, in the US, you have to pay, I don't know, 30-40% tax depending on your income level, etc. But you get services. The government provides services. They provide you excellent transportation, excellent roads, law and order, and everything, right? It's a first world country. In India, you get tax, the same kind of tax, but what services do you get? You get nothing. The people who pay the most taxes, they suffer the most, unfortunately. That's true. So look, tax is obviously is necessary. The government needs taxation revenue in order to run the country. But my point is, make it as simple as possible. You know what? Lots of bureaucrats, lots of, not all, but lots of bureaucrats and lots of media people and lots of politicians, etc. What they claim? They claim that only 2% or 3% of Indians pay tax, which is an outright lie. Okay? Because every single Indian pays taxes. If you buy 1 kilo of potatoes, you're paying tax on that. It's already been taxed. Whether you buy a chai, a glass of chai, there is tax in that. You paid 10 rupees for that. They like 3 rupees or 4 rupees of that is tax. The government takes a cut of every single monetary transaction that happens in this country. Everything is taxed. There is GST on everything. So you are already paying taxes. But those of you who pay income tax, first of all, you'll pay 20, 30, whatever percent income tax. So out of every 1,000 rupees you earn, you come home with 700 bucks, let's say 700 rupees. Then you have to pay road tax. Then you have to, every time you buy something, you have to pay tax on that. If you purchase a house, you have to pay stamp duty and registration duty and whatnot. So your money has already been taxed. And now you have to pay tax on top of that and then tax on top of that. It is horrible. So why can't we just have a simplified tax regime where you simply pay tax on every time you purchase something? Do away with income tax, make everything GST, or so, make it just simple, right? Why do you have to make it so complicated? And please provide services. Obviously, it's easier said than done. It's not this government that's responsible for the condition, the state that India is in. They're trying their best to improve it, no doubt about that. And much more can be done, no doubt about that either. Uh, so that's where we are. It's not an enviable position to be in if you are the government of India. You do need taxation. You can make it easier if you want to, but you're not doing it. But then tax is anyway going to be there, and people will obviously not be happy, especially the middle class, etc., who are the ones who are paying income tax. They won't be happy about this, and they will voice their unhappiness, and then the government has to swallow that pain. Of course, it's just they can choose to ignore it if they want. So yeah, what we need to do is we need to make services in India better. And there are countries with the same kind of per capita GDP as India that provide much better services. So that unfortunately is the purview, the domain of the state governments in India, and many state governments have certain problems allegedly. So yeah, that's where we are. We need to overall as a nation raise our standards, and it's not a bottom up process, it's a top down process. But we are told it's a bottom up process, and that's why we blame ourselves for everything that's wrong with India. The Indian citizen is made to self-flagellate that everything that's bad in India is my fault. It is the fault of the people of India. What do they say? Yatha praja tatha raja. No, that's not how it is. Yatha raja tatha praja. That's how it should be. But yeah, okay. Um, Darshan Singh says, "Why should we work hard if we're all going to die one day? How am I even relevant in this 8 billion population world? How will my work? How is it going to be relevant in the upcoming years? Life seems meaningless." Look, no one has an answer to what's the purpose of life, what's the meaning of life, what is all this about. Of course, everyone's going to die. Every single human being who has existed on this planet has died. So that is the fate that awaits all of us. So then the question is, then the fact is, the reality is that the moment you're born, the clock is ticking and you're heading in that direction, right? And you don't know how much time you have. Only the gods know that. Okay, I guess. So you have a certain limited amount of time, and then what you have to decide is what you do. What are you going to do with this time? You can while away your time doing nothing, playing games, scrolling social media, or you can take extremely heavy challenges which will make your life uncomfortable. What do you do? But whatever you do, you're going to die, and most likely in a few years nobody is going to remember you. Nobody's going to remember me. Do you remember who your great great grandfather grandmother was? Do you remember the name? You don't remember them. So what's the point of this? What's the point of all of this is the question. My answer is the meaning of life is whatever you want it to be. The purpose of life is whatever you want it to be. If you want, if you feel that life is meaningless and there's no purpose, then it's going to be like that for you. But if someone else decides that my life is going to have this purpose and my actions will have this meaning, I'm doing it for this meaning, this reason. Yes, I'm going to die. Maybe nobody will remember me in a few years, but so what? At least I will live a meaningful life from my perspective. So it's entirely up to you. You are the architect of your life. You are the main character in your story. Who cares what others think? At least you're going to have a good time, right? So my point is, don't worry about what others think about you or will think of you in the future. You are the main character. People will come and go, but you're gonna be with yourself forever as long as this life exists, and maybe who knows beyond that also perhaps. So stop worrying about others. Think of what you want to do. Ask yourself, who are you as a person? What are your likes, dislikes? What is it that gives your life meaning? And then you pursue that. And don't worry about what other people think of you and what they will think about you after you're gone and all that. So essentially life is what you make of it. The purpose of life is whatever you want it to be, and the meaning of life is also whatever you want it to be. So my simple thing is, make your life the greatest life possible. Make it an adventure. Be the real main character of your life. Don't be, what do they say, NPC, right? Don't be an NPC. Be your main character. Live your life as grand as you can make it be. Make it to be. Okay. Cinephile says, are Michael Phelps, Usain Bolt, and Simone Biles the greatest athletes of all time? As no one has ever come close to to the skills that they have. And who's winning gold for India? I think there are. Okay, so Michael Phelps, Usain Bolt, Simone Biles, they're definitely a great athletes, but there have been others too, and probably people don't remember those today. So let me give you a few examples of great athletes. Let us go to Google and let me. Okay, how about Alexander Karelin? This guy, Alexander Karelin, the greatest wrestler in human history. In his entire professional career, he lost one fight, which happened to be his last fight. Okay, and that too he lost on a stupid technicality. And this guy was just unbelievable, incredible. Nobody could defeat him. He was a super heavyweight, and he used to pick up other guys as if they were nothing. Look at that. He's picking up a guy who's like 120, 130 kilos, like a toy, and tossing him. So Alexander Karelin is the greatest wrestler of all time. Nobody comes close to him, and he's now a politician, a successful politician. Okay, that's one. Then you obviously have Mike Tyson. Great, great. Probably the greatest boxer of all time. Some people will say it's Muhammad Ali. Some people will say somebody else. But among those who I have seen, he's the greatest. And devastating power this guy had. Tremendous. Okay. So yeah, this guy, tremendous. And obviously, Usain Bolt, definitely the greatest sprinter of all time. Simone Biles, gymnast, I believe, yes, gymnast. Yeah, she's good. Michael Phelps, that guy Torpedo, that guy also was good. The Australian, great swimmers. Probably Michael Phelps is the greatest, and so on. So yeah, there are many of these athletes who are the greatest of their time. Really admirable people, and there's a lot you can learn from them. The kind of discipline they have exhibited, the single-minded focus that they had in the pursuit of gold and glory for themselves and for country, etc. There's a lot you can learn from them. Okay, now the next question is, who's winning gold for India? I hope we win a few golds this time, the Olympics. Um, Not sure how many we will win. I hope there's at least one. Who's the guy, the javelin throw guy? I forget his name, man. The guy who won gold last time. Tremendous, tremendous athlete. Um, I hope he wins. So yeah, I hope somebody wins gold for India. Kaiti says, "Do you know Telugu?" No, I'm afraid I don't know Telugu. Very interesting language. I know people who know Telugu. We all know people who know Telugu, but I myself uh, don't quite know Telugu. Okay. Gautam Gambhir, hello, coach. Says, how do you see insurgency issue in the northeast, particularly Nagaland? Please shed some light on the way forward and if there's any solution soon. I'm sorry if this wasn't a good time to ask this question. No, it's okay. Look, the insurgency issue in the far east of India, the northeast, like we say, has been around for a very long time. Okay, it's not something that's happening right now. So let's once again go to the map. I have to explain where this region is. The far east of India, which everybody calls the northeast. The far east of India is these states over here, from Arunachal Pradesh all the way down to Mizoram. And from the time India became independent from the British, 1950s onwards, these states, all of these states had multiple insurgencies. Okay. And apart from Arunachal Pradesh, mostly. But you had multiple insurgencies and insurgent groups in Nagaland, in Mizoram, in Manipur, and Assam, etc. And in Mizoram, the situation became so bad that in 1966, I believe, the Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, had to launch airstrikes on separatists. Now, these separatists were funded and financed by foreign powers. It is known. It is known that the CIA was funding various terrorist insurgent groups in certain states in the far east of India. It is also known that the Chinese were funding and aiding such separatists since the 1950s, 1960s onwards, even the CIA. Pakistan was involved. Pakistan is a US proxy, obviously, and so on. At the time, there was East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, so there was a lot happening there as well. So, yeah, it's been around for a very long time. Okay, you had AFSPA, the Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which was in force in Manipur and other parts of the Far East from the 1950s onwards, 1958 onwards. For decades, it was in place. Imagine that, how horrible it must have been for the people, for the civilians over there. So it's been a disaster. It's been an absolute disaster. And what exacerbated the situation is the Nehruvian regime's decision to Christianize the entire Northeast. They banned any Hindu religious people from entering the far east of India, and they gave complete carte blanche to American missionaries to Christianize very large parts of the far east of India. So almost the whole of Nagaland is now Christian. The entirety of Mizoram is Christian. There is the situation in other parts of the Far East as well, and that has contributed to the situation that we see right now, because essentially it's the church that rules very large parts of this region. So what's the way forward? The way forward is India needs to strengthen itself. India needs to become more powerful so that we can push back against foreign interference in the region. Um, as we know, there is the situation that's happening in Manipur right now. Manipur has been aflame since May last year. Kuki terrorists, Kuki separatists have been causing mayhem. They are foreign infiltrators in this region in India. Millions, I would not say millions, but lakhs of them have infiltrated into Manipur in the past few years because of the open borders that have been in place. And the situation is dire right now. The Americans want to create an artificial nation, an artificial Christian nation, Cookie Land for Christ in this region, to cut off India's access from Southeast Asia. So that's the situation. And I don't see any immediate solution to this. It's gonna get bad before it's gonna get worse before it gets better. So yeah, that's where we are. The greatest sin in geopolitics is weakness. And right now, India is not powerful enough. And don't blame Mr. Modi for that, okay? Mr. Modi didn't make the India that he has inherited wasn't made by him. He's trying to do his best. I'm sure he can do better. I'm not saying he can't, but it's not the situation is not of his making. Okay, Manipur, for example, it's not the BJP, the Modi government's fault that this has happened. They could have obviously done things differently. They should have been aware of the large scale, industrial scale illegal immigration happening into Manipur. Certain things can still be done differently, especially when it comes to, well, I'll not go into that, but things can be done differently. But overall, the situation was not created by this government. They simply inherited a very bad situation. Now it's going to take at least 20 years. And what's the solution? Minimum 20 years. The solution is to expel all foreigners out of India. It's as simple as that. Many of them they claim that they have been here forever and they have Aadhaar cards and passports and whatnot. What do you do now? What do you do now? Well, the government has to find a solution. You cannot absorb them all. Every goddamn foreigner comes into India and becomes an Indian. Millions of Bangladeshis, millions of cookies, millions of God knows who else. Everybody, and none of them has any allegiance to Indian culture and civilization. That's what we are doing. It's high time we stop that, but it's going to take time. Okay. Uh, Tanay Chandra says a lot of Afghan Pashtuns believe that they are Bani Israel, a part of one of the 12 tribes from Judea. Are the Jews and the Pashtuns genetically brothers? Genetically, there's nothing in common between the Jews and the Pashtuns. Absolutely nothing. But the Pashtuns have been brainwashed in the past 1,000 years, roughly, into believing that they are descendants of one of the lost tribes of Israel. And so they believe it. And that's what their ancestors have been telling them for the past, I don't know, few generations. So they all believe it today. It's something they see as self-evident. So yeah, most Pashtuns believe that they are descendants of an Israeli tribe. And they have nothing to do with the subcontinent. We are descendants of foreign conquerors. That's what they believe. Well, what can I do about it? Okay. Okay. Alan J. Victor says, who does Israel serve? You have said in the past that sovereign countries are India, America, China, and Russia, and to some extent France. Then which country controls Iran? Good question. So, sovereignty is something that very few nations genuinely have. When so no nation is entirely immune from external interference in its internal affairs. Even the US is not immune from that. But among all the powers in in the world, there's only four nations, like I've said: the US, Russia, China, and India. And these four essentially that are genuinely sovereign nations. France, well, it's part of NATO, it's part of the EU, so there are sovereignty issues there. Now the question is a very good question about Iran. What about Iran? How sovereign, or to what extent is Iran sovereign? So we are talking about this nation next to India. I mean, there's a temporary nation in between the two, but yeah, Iran, our historical neighbor. So Iran, you see, Iran isn't controlled by any other nation. Iran doesn't have any foreign military bases on its territory. So from that perspective, it is reasonably sovereign. But it is it has been suffering from US sanctions for a very long time, brutal, devastating sanctions on Iran, because of which it has had to become, let's say, so to say, an ally of China as well as Russia. And that's why it is significantly influenced by those two nations, China as well as Russia. So today, people speak about this axis, the China, Russia, Iran axis. North Korea is also spoken of in the same breath, uh, and Syria as well. So Iran is part of that axis, and so it cannot entirely go against the wishes and desires of Russia and China. It has to kind of accede to those, and because of that constraint, you can say that you can possibly say that Iran isn't entirely sovereign, even though it doesn't have foreign military bases on its territory. So it doesn't serve as such any other nations, but it has to stay to keep China and Russia happy, and it has to keep them in good humor. And obviously, for that, you have to sometimes give certain concessions privately that nobody may come to know about. But for example, you will give the Chinese a 25-year strategic alliance deal, uh, and you will sell tremendous amounts of oil to the Chinese at discounted rates. And in exchange, the Chinese will invest some money, $400 billion or something, into your economy over a 25-year period, that sort of thing, quid pro quo, that sort of thing. But you have to keep the Chinese happy. You also have to keep the Russians happy. So these constraints, uh, they prevent you from acting the way you otherwise would have wanted to act. So that is the situation that Iran is in. Samarth Acharya says, why do roads get damaged in the rainy season? Southeast Asian countries are also tropical countries, but their roads are way better than ours. Let's talk. Look, what is one of the major problems that India faces? One of India's major problems, probably India's core problem, central problem, is corruption. Okay, and that's why roads get damaged every year during monsoons in the rainy season. There is no reason for a road to get potholed and damaged every 12 months. There's no reason for it. It happens when a significant portion of the budget allocated for the road is misappropriated and inferior grade materials are used to construct the road deliberately, so that next year when it rains again, it's going to get damaged. So you're going to have to again allocate a large sum of money to repair the road, and once again you're going to misappropriate most of it and again construct a substandard road, which means next year again you're going to have to repeat the process. So it's a recurring process, and whoever is involved in this makes money year after year after year. Okay, I'm not talking about any specific city or state or location in India. I'm just saying hypothetically in various parts of India this may be happening. Okay, and that's why roads get damaged during the rainy season. If you remove the corruption factor from India, then India will be a way different, way better country. But that's where we are today in India. India essentially runs on corruption. And my question is, where is India's war on corruption? When is it going to happen? Right. Okay, once again, this question: is Iran going to take a huge action in response to the death of Hamas leader? If yes, what could it be? Then let's once again analyze it. What options does Iran have? Look at the geography. The map tells you half the story. The distance between Iran's borders and Israel's borders is about 900 or 1,000 kilometers, roughly 1,000 kilometers. So if Iran wants to take a huge action, what will it do? Will it launch drone strikes, like a few hundred drones? It did that last time, a few months ago. That was kind of an exercise in futility. Most of the drones were shot down, and those that did land in Israel and hit some targets, they did not cause any significant damage or take out any high value targets. So overall, it was an exercise in futility. So let's say they do it again. Once again, it won't have much of an effect, which will make them appear toothless. So that's one option which may not really work. The other option is, can they launch missile strikes? Well, missile strikes also may not be that effective because the Israelis have this iron dome system, which is pretty effective. So once again, that may also not work. Iran doesn't have the air force power to launch an airstrike on Israel. So that also doesn't work. So what options does Iran have? Is the question. The only thing Iran can do is to launch terror attacks on Israel through proxies like Hamas, like Hezbollah, like the Houthis in the at sea, etc. That's all Iran can do. What else can it do? It doesn't have the ability to launch a large scale attack on Israel, even if it wants to. So it's going to have to do it through proxy methods. Okay, that's what could happen. Okay. McLevin says, "What's with the hate towards India recently? Every second tweet is about India. You said it was coming, but I didn't expect it at this level." I'll tell you what's happening. Indians are becoming increasingly relevant politically in the US and in the West, especially the US. So in the past, who did you have? You had Nikki Haley, you had Bobby Jindal, Piyush Jindal, who had to convert to Christianity and acquire foreign names in order to be relevant politically. But today, you have people like Vivek Ramaswamy and many more upcoming people who are unabashedly Indian. They are unabashedly Hindu. They don't see they don't see the need to convert to Christianity to be relevant in the US. They don't see the need to change their names to be relevant in the US. And they are tremendously competent. Vivek Ramaswamy can take on anybody and destroy any debater. And this is just the beginning. Indians are coming up in the US. Okay? And Indians are better than the average American, because the Americans have ensured that they took the best of the Indians, right? So what we are seeing is that the Indians are now threatening to take over the US. Not just earlier, it was just businesses, right? Motels, 7-Elevens, and Indians would be doctors, Indians would be lawyers, etc. They would give services, they would provide services and keep a low profile. But now it's no longer the case. Indians are they're going to take over, and this is visible now, and it's just the beginning. In a few years, you'll have way more Indians all over the place. And Indians are brash, outspoken, not like the Asians. They're not like the Chinese and Eastern Asians who keep quiet and are reserved. No, Indians are like loud, and they're gonna go and take whatever they can, and they're competent. And they're better than the average American. So the Americans are now feeling this. They're feeling a threat. They're feeling threatened by the rise of the Indians, the brown people in the US. And that's why there is this tremendous outpouring of hatred towards India and racism towards Indians. That is what's happening. And towards Hinduism also, Hinduphobia. You're seeing all that. It's simply a symptom. It's a reaction, a negative reaction to the assertiveness and rise of all these assertive Indians in the US. And India is much more visible now. There are Indians are all over social media, and Indians don't back down from a fight. Indians love arguing and fighting, so you simply can't fight the Indians. You say something bad about India, 300 Indians will come and jump on you. There was this guy recently, some comedian, Leonardo Joni or something, and he was saying bad things about Indians, and now where is he? So yeah, racist person. So it's normal, it's natural. You colonized people are now threatening to colonize us. How dare you? But there's nothing they can do about it. The Indians are going to take over the US. Well, they'll try at least. So that's why you're seeing this. Okay. um Siddharth Singh Rajpurohit says, do you agree that the Middle East will never attain peace until and unless the US is a superpower? And how long the US will remain a superpower despite of its double standard policies? Well, one of the characteristics of a superpower is that they are hypocritical. They have double standards. They say one thing, but they do another thing. They will tell everybody to believe in democracy and freedom and human rights, and they will trample all over those standards. And the more powerful you are, the more you are entitled to be hypocritical. Okay? So the most hypocritical nation is going to be the most powerful nation. You have to earn the right to be a hypocrite. And the Americans have earned the right. Okay? So we don't need to get emotional about this. That is simply the way the world works. The world has always had double standards. The powerful have a set of rules of their own, and the powerless, they don't get to make the rules. They will just do what they said, what they're told to do. That's just how the world works. Don't feel bad about it. Don't complain about it. Okay? So, if a nation has double standards, does it mean that it will no longer be a superpower? No. Being a superpower or not being a superpower has nothing to do with having double standards. The US will remain a superpower as long as it knows how to remain a superpower, as long as it doesn't allow other nations to surpass it or to threaten it. And they're extremely jealous in this regard. They will not allow any nation to aspire to be a great power. Then that's what's happening with India right now. China is under control by the US. The Chinese economy and the American economy are deeply intertwined, joined at the hip. So the Americans aren't really worried about China, even though they keep on speaking about China. Okay, you should understand there's a difference between words and actions. The Americans will keep on speaking about China, keep on hyping up the Chinese threat. The Chinese are not a threat to the US. The Chinese military is nothing compared to the US military. Okay? The Chinese are nowhere uh, comparable to the US. The Americans are way more powerful than China. The one nation the Americans are genuinely worried about and scared of is Russia, but they will not speak about it. All right. Uh, So the Americans are worried about Russia, and that's why they're trying to encircle Russia and so on and so forth. So the US will remain a superpower as long as they play the game right, as long as they play the game and win it. But yes, the Middle East will never have peace as long as the Americans are meddling there. That's not going to happen. You're right. Parag Chauhan says, "Do you think the Olympics is just a competition between genetic freaks? As in the case of Michael Phelps, his body produces half the lactic acid than a normal human being does, and many other things in many other players." You are right, actually, in some cases at least. You need to be genetically genuinely gifted, and you need to put in a tremendous amount of hard work to succeed at the Olympics today. The Olympics, it's no longer, the Olympics was originally supposed to be a competition between gifted amateurs. It was supposed to be a competition between gifted amateurs, but now it's like fully professional. You have to be genetically gifted, the 1% of the 1%, and you need to put in a tremendous amount of hard work, and maybe more than a little more than hard work, perhaps. Some help from the doctor, perhaps. So, yeah, that's what it is. That's what the Olympics is. And that's why nations with larger populations typically do better in the Olympics, because they have a larger pool, genetic pool to draw from, except for nations like India, in which, in our case, the government simply doesn't care about India's national prestige. So there is very little investment in sports. Okay. DK says, America deliberately instilling fear about China in the world? They did the same about many Arab countries. The Americans will play all these games. Look, like I said just a while ago, the Americans keep on hyping up the alleged China threat when the nation that they're really worried about is Russia. And of course, they do spare no effort in demonizing Russia as well. So they do that. The Americans are masters of propaganda. Their entire media is a propaganda machine. Okay. And so they will do it. They will do whatever it takes for them to remain in pole position globally, the sole superpower. Sujin says, is India an artificial nation to counterbalance China for the US, just like an artificial nation like Pakistan to counterbalance India? My dear sir, India is not an artificial nation. India is the world's oldest civilization. We have always been where we are. Here's the map of India. Okay. The Indian subcontinent was the people who inhabit the subcontinent. We have been here for 60, 70,000 years, 80,000 years perhaps. We are the oldest civilization. We are the oldest culture that is known in the world, the oldest known civilization. How can you imagine that we are an artificial nation? Yes, in 1940, in 1950, we were redefined as a nation state. But what we actually are is a civilization state. So there's nothing artificial about India. India is one of the few natural nations and civilizations in the world. The US is an artificial nation. Okay. It was created recently through conquest of lands that did not belong to the Europeans. The US is an artificial nation, so is Canada, and so on. So is obviously Pakistan. Pakistan is also a temporary nation, apart from being an artificial nation. Okay. Ayush Raj says, why is China pushing suddenly for normal relations with India? We recently had commander level meeting in Delhi, the Chinese ambassador writing piece in the Hindu, Global Times praising India. Yeah, so something is happening for sure. Okay. The Chinese are adopting a conciliatory approach towards India. The ambassador is suddenly throwing out this charm offensive. The Global Times is no longer, you know, raising temperatures shrilly against India. It's so something is in the work. Something is going on. We're not quite sure what it is. It looks like the Indian government may be amenable to allowing Chinese companies to invest in India and set up manufacturing plants in India, which would be great for the Chinese economy because they are facing all kinds of problems vis-a-vis the West, and the Chinese economy isn't doing great. So if the Chinese get access to this giant market of India, that will be great for their economy. So that's good for them, and it's also good for India if we get Chinese investment and all that. So it looks like, it may be possible that the Chinese have realized that they stand to lose more than they gain in a conflict with India, because if need be, India can bring in the US and uh, the West if need be, and that will not be great for China. And it's even if India is standing on its own, it will be difficult for the Chinese to defeat India in a war. But a war may still happen, but sometime in the future, perhaps. Maybe we are postponing the war by 5 or 10 years, perhaps. So overall, it looks like for the time being, it may be in both nations' interests to cooperate for some time, perhaps. Yeah. So that could be what's in the offing. I'm not sure if it's going to work out that way. So we'll keep an eye on that. But right now, that's the direction in which this relationship seems to be going. Maybe it's too early to say anything concrete or specific about this, but it looks like we may be heading in that direction. But overall, please remember, the Chinese are not our friends. As long as the Chinese occupy Tibet, we will never have lasting peace with China. Okay, that is something we should never forget. But yes, we can certainly, you can cooperate with everybody, including your adversaries. That's how the game is played. I mean, look at Indian politics. Learn from your domestic politics. One day, so and so politician is in that coalition. 12 months later, he's in this coalition. 20 years ago, he had backstabbed these people. I'm talking about some hypothetical politician, not anybody in real. But that's typically how politics is played in India, right? So why is it surprising if the same thing happens on a global scale in geopolitics? The same patterns and principles apply everywhere. Tanay Chandra says, recently Turkish media outlets alleged that Indian RAW agents alongside Mossad was responsible for the death of Ismail Haniyeh, the head of Hamas. So, what are my views on Erdogan and Turkey? These days, everybody is going after India, right? The Americans, first the Canadians claimed that we tried to assassinate some second-rate has-been terrorist sheltered by Canada. What Nijar or something. Then the Americans alleged that Indian RAW agents were trying to assassinate terrorists. The Americans are sheltering, and now the Turks apparently are claiming that India is involved in the assassination of the Palestinian terrorist Haniyeh. So what's going on? Well, my point is, show us the evidence. Show the evidence. Are you able to produce evidence, incontrovertible evidence, to substantiate your allegations? None of them can. The Americans haven't provided any evidence. The Canadians under Mr. Trudeau haven't been able to provide any evidence. And over here, the Turks, well, show us the evidence, right? I don't think India is into all these things. I don't think India is doing this. Uh, that's what I can tell you. What are my views on Erdogan and Turkey? Erdogan and Turkey. Look, I would like good relations with everybody. I would like good relations between India and Turkey as well. Turkey is a beautiful country, no doubt. An interesting history and culture, no doubt. Interesting population, no doubt. Mr. Erdogan, interesting guy. Used to play football. And now he's the leader in Turkey. Interesting guy. So, what can I say? Overall, I would like good relations with everybody. We should be everybody's friend, but it's not practically possible in the world. All right. Uh, Turkey. Turkey. Hol nol. Turkey. Haha. Okay, let's see what else do we have. Srivatsa says, how can we understand and visualize spaces with fractional dimensions, such as 1.5 or 2.5 dimensions? We can't. You can't visualize that. It's just a mathematical abstraction. But it may be the true reality of the world. Maybe the world is e-dimensional, like like so. Dr. Subhash Kak, who's an Indian American scientist, he has proposed this new theory that that the world is actually e-dimensional, 2 point whatever, right? It's a fractal dimension. It's not three-dimensional, four-dimensional, or whatever. It's e-dimensional. So look, there's no way we can actually visualize it because our eyes, our senses, they don't show us the reality of the world. They show us a simplification of what the world is. Light and colors, it's all vibrations. It's all it's all photons, right? Photons. What are photons? These are wave packets with frequencies and wavelengths, etc. So my point is, the world is way weirder than what we perceive it to be, and it's not possible for us humans, simple animals, to visualize fractionally dimensional spaces or even four-dimensional, five-dimensional space. The only thing we can visualize is three-dimensional space or two-dimensional or one-dimensional. So we can visualize a sheet of paper, which is a two-dimensional object. We can visualize a string, a thread, which is essentially more or less a one-dimensional object. We can even visualize zero-dimensional objects, which are just points. But we can't visualize anything beyond three dimensions. If you ask me to visualize a four-dimensional object, I can kind of try to imagine that, but you can't really grasp that. So it's not possible. You can't. You simply can't. It's simply a mathematical abstraction. It's something you can use mathematically in your equations and all, but it's essentially impossible to visualize that. Okay. Ankita says, I wonder how you managed to stay away amidst all the geopolitical turmoil. Geopolitics is so chaotic. Um, this decade is a decade of tremendous change. You're going to see change that is the kind of change you typically see in multiple decades in this one decade. So, yeah, things will move really fast. They are moving really fast in the 2020s. So, I go away for a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, and so much has changed. So much has happened. Trump almost gets killed. Yeah. And the Iran Israel situation again erupts into chaos, and a whole lot is happening. There's stuff happening in Africa as well. Wagner is involved in so much. So yeah, it's you gotta stay in touch with what's happening all the time. Okay. Hi Pill 91 says, why do you say that if India's GDP grows at 7 or 8% for 30 years, it will leave China behind? Haven't you seen how aggressively China is working on technology, defense, etc., whatnot? And they even claim to beat the US in all sectors by 2034. Forget India. China will defeat even the aliens by 2034. China will defeat the kingdom of Alpha Centauri, Proxima Centauri by 2040. They will defeat everybody. Look, everybody can make grand claims, but what you have to see is numbers. Okay, they are working on what some an artificial sun kind of thing. They are working on various technology that nobody has heard of. They are claims. We have to see evidence of that, and what you may what you have to base your your understanding of the world on, the basis has to be something you can measure, not something you have to you can only speculate about. So the only things you can measure are numbers. What numbers? GDP, etc. Now we can see that the Chinese GDP growth is contracting. Everybody can see that the Chinese economy is no longer doing well, and there are other problems in China. The total fertility rate has collapsed. There's a demographic disaster that's coming up. So they can invest as much as they want in technology and all that. They can work on artificial intelligence and robotics, etc. But nothing can replace human beings. So my point is, you can be swayed by all the propaganda, etc. But I'm a realist. I stay grounded, and I still say that if India grows at 7, 8, 9, 10% for 30 years, we will become the second largest economy in the world soon enough. By 2100, we will even outpace the US. But it's a big but. You got to do it. And that's not easy. Given the state of affairs in India, the bureaucracy and the inertia and the corruption and the divisions in the country and the pathetic education system, it will be very hard. Anisha says you had promised that you will make a separate video for the Dashrajna War, Battle of Ten Kings. It's been 2 years now. Please make a video on it if possible. Okay. Okay. Well, thank you for the reminder. And yeah. Okay, I'll put that on my to-do list. Battle of Ten Kings. What else? Priya says, what's your take on men wearing sari on Word magazine? Do you think it's okay or it's wokeism? And can you please explain wokeism, and if it's bad, then why? Um, Look, if somebody wants to wear a sari, if a guy wants to wear a sari, this is a free country. Do whatever you want. I don't care. I personally don't care. If somebody wants to do it because they feel the urge to do it, they want to try something different, or they feel that I am not a guy, I'm a girl, and I have this feminine instinct. You want to do it? Do it. By all means, do it. It doesn't offend me. I don't care. My issue is when you try to do this to influence people and to try to change people's minds. Okay, I have, for example, let's talk about religious conversions. If somebody decides that from tomorrow I want to convert to so and so religion because I feel an affinity towards that, then by all means do it. By all means do it. I have absolutely nothing against that. But when people try to convert people to a specific religion on an industrial scale by giving inducements of money and by trying to influence people's minds, especially uh, gullible people, then that's a problem. Okay, because that is an attempt at demographic re-engineering. Similarly, when you are trying to spread certain ideologies symbolically by putting certain images on magazines, on the front page of magazines, you're doing it for a nefarious purpose, then I have a problem with that. So my point is, I have absolutely nothing against gay people. I have absolutely nothing against people who want to wear whatever they want. I have absolutely nothing against anybody. Everybody should be free to do whatever they want to do as long as it is legal. That's what I believe. But when you're trying to influence the minds of youngsters, of young people, of children, that's what I'm against. That is something wrong. And that is something that's coming from outside of this country. That is essentially an attempt by external forces to influence the minds and hearts of children and youngsters in India. Why am I saying it's foreign forces? Because this has never been part of Indian culture. Men wearing saris. Okay? And if someone's wearing a sari, that's fine. But why do you need to put it up on magazines and multiple magazines? So there is definitely a campaign that is going on to promote certain ideologies. And that's the woke ideology that we're talking about. What is wokeism is a second question. What is wokeism? Well, wokeism essentially is an assault against culture. It's an assault against the family system. It's an assault against traditional values. And and some people will say, what's wrong with changing your values and your systems and all? What's so great about traditional values? Well, traditional values have worked for thousands of years. You see, it gives you a stable society. It gives you a stable, productive society. Whichever society you're talking about, whichever culture you're talking about, whether it's the West, East, whatever, every region has its own specific set of cultural norms, etc., which have worked for that region. Now, if you are made to believe that your culture is inferior, then you will feel that you need to change it. So then let's do all this stuff. So wokeism is all about destroying the family system. You know, high rates of divorce, single mothers, that sort of thing. See exactly what's happening in the US. They want to import that into India. So in the US, so wokeism has come out of the US. Okay, it is a continuation. It's an evolution, a morphing of the Marxist ideology that has been ruling US academic campuses since the 1960s, and it has now morphed into wokeism, what we call wokeism. So this Marxist leftist ideology first co-opted feminism and ruined feminism. It was a good cause. It was necessary in the US. It was necessary in the West, feminism. But then Marxism co-opted feminism, hijacked feminism, and completely distorted it. And now they've started pushing self mutilation and hormonal disruption of the body and whatnot. And now they're trying in the US. Okay, now they're trying to export it to nations like India. My point is, if you want to do it, it's fine. You don't need to export it to us. Okay, it's not part of what we do. It's not never been part of our way of life. Our way of life is superior to yours. You may not believe it. I don't care. So that's what it is. Wokeism is about destroying the family system. It's about destroying your culture so that you can become an atomized society in which the individual is the unit of society, not the family. And when the individual becomes the unit of society, it means the family system is broken. You no longer value family. You are no longer in contact with the family. And then the corporations and the media can control you. And you become a consumer. And India becomes a market. India should not produce anything. India should just consume, consume, consume. That's what they want. That's the issue. Ahem. Um, okay, Abhishek says, what are India's options now that China has started trading Pakistan the J-31 fighter jet? F-414 jet engines have been delayed by the US. Is RD-33 better? Kaveri engine is also making some progress. What's your opinion? Look, we should look. We don't have any indigenous jet engine technology right now. We have the Kaveri engine that is able to produce a certain amount of thrust, which is not exactly what we need. It is less than what we need. So you can either pay exorbitant amounts of money to the French or the Russians and buy their technology in case they are willing to give the technology. I think it may happen. The Russians and the French, or the French, may give us the technology eventually at a price, at a very heavy extortionate price. I think whatever the price is, we should get the technology, because developing a powerful engine takes a lot of time. Okay, so we don't have too many options right now. Beggars can't be choosers. Even the Chinese are they are trying to replicate Russian jet engine technology. They are making some progress in that. The Russian Saturn engine, or whatever it was, the Chinese are trying to replicate. The Americans will do their best to arm twist India and to extract concessions from India, delaying the uh, delivery of jet engines and so on, which will impact the Tejas fighter program. The Chinese will obviously try to encircle India via Pakistan by doing whatever they can, if even offering that J-31 fighter jet or whatever, training Pakistani pilots and so on. So, look, these are just the facts of the world. Okay, that's just the way the world is. You can either complain about it and cry about it, or you can do whatever is possible within your means. So that's what India must do. India needs to buy, beg, borrow, or steal jet engine technology. Okay, that's it. We need that. We need that. Alternatively, use the existing Kaveri engine in fighter planes, but use two engines instead of one. So that will give you enough thrust. That's also something you can do. But ideally, you want a powerful enough single jet engine. So buy, beg, borrow, steal, like you say. There's everything's fair in geopolitics. There is no right or wrong in geopolitics. Get what your nation needs. Get it done some way or the other. That's my opinion. AJ91 says, will abolishing Indian tax be good for the Indian economy? Yeah, absolutely. We already have the GST, we already have that, right? Every single thing that is bought or sold, there is a tax that the government gets on it. So why do you need to have multiple layers of taxation? Why? Just make it simple, right? It's not like we don't want to pay the government tax. We're giving tax to the government every time we buy a single item. I buy a mouse, I buy a pencil, I buy a pen, I buy one of these books or whatever, I'm paying tax to the government. Every single monetary transaction gives a tax to the government. So why do we need income tax? Why do we need so many different kinds of tax? Why? Just to keep those babus employed in the ministry, right? Come on, man. Make life simple for Indians. Make life easier for Indians. That's what I would urge the government of India to do. Breezy says, I'm 26. I just want Native Americans to be appreciated. I do appreciate Native Americans. They are the true natives, and I would say the true citizens of North America. The people who are ruling North America are descendants of colonizers, descendants of invaders, occupiers, settler colonialism. The Native Americans have been disenfranchised. They have been reduced to second class citizens in their own land. And that is a travesty that needs to be rectified. And yeah, I would like to see better days again for the true natives of the Americas, the Native Americans, for sure. Shri Ramachandraya Namaha says, is Bharat able to tackle China and the US? Look, China is about 4 times more powerful than Bharat. The US is about uh, 20 times more powerful than Bharat. So, from that perspective, we are no match. Okay? So, when you are not powerful, when you are weak, you have to be more intelligent and you have to play intelligent games. So, that's what India was doing. So, in geopolitics, what you do is you play one against the other. When there are two enemies who are both powerful, you play one against the other and make sure they fight and they don't come and harm you. And there are lots of such things you can do. Sam, Dama, Danda, Bhed, read the Artha Shastra. There's so many things you can do, etc. So we need to, overcome a certain amount of adversity for a certain amount of time, maybe until 2040, 2050. And it's going to be a difficult period of time for us, very difficult period of time for us. But I think we can do it. Okay. So, despite our significant weakness right now relative to these two nations, we are on track to become much more powerful in the future. But for that, we need uninterrupted economic growth for a period of 20 to 30 years minimum. And that must happen. And we also need to ensure there is no military conflict that we get embroiled in during this time period. So, all that needs to happen for us to reach where we need to reach, which won't be easy. But nothing worthwhile is easy in life. So, um, SP Joker says, who was Yukio Mishima and what was his vision for Japan? Yukio Mishima was a poet, an author, a philosopher, and bodybuilder, martial artist, etc. He was a Japanese nationalist. He was in favor of a genuinely sovereign, independent Japan, free from US domination. And his vision for Japan was genuine freedom for Japan. Eviction of the Americans from Japan. The Americans have more than 120 permanent military bases on Japanese soil, and he obviously did not like that, and he wanted the Japanese self-defense forces to develop some national pride and evict the Americans from Japan. And obviously, he did not get to see his vision come alive, vision happen, because Japan is still occupied. Japan is still under permanent US military occupation. And Yukio Mishima ended his life by committing seppuku, harakiri, after giving a speech to the cadets of the Japanese self-defense forces. Yes, very interesting person. And I have some of his books somewhere. Aditya Sarkar says, please pick my question. Do you think physics and all disciplines of science are stagnating? I don't think all the disciplines of science are stagnating, but physics has hit a brick wall, like I've said many times. There's nothing new that's happening in physics. Applied physics, there's lots that's happening. Okay. But core physics, fundamental physics, theoretical physics, we are not making any progress. We have hit a brick wall. We slammed into a brick wall, and there's been no new progress in our understanding of the universe since roughly 1980. The last big advance was the uh, the theory of inflation, cosmological inflation, that was proposed by Alan Guth. What year was that? 78, 79, 80, 81, somewhere around that time. Since then, there's been nothing. Nothing, no new insight, theoretical advance in physics, nothing. And much of it probably has to do with this, with the kind of system academia has become. Extremely well, it promotes groupthink. It doesn't promote uh, thinking out of the box. Too much emphasis on various things and all. And the string theory mafia has taken over the physics departments in the West. And in India, there's nothing happening anyway, because the education system is rotten to the core, and no one's allowed to do any research. And mediocre people are promoted at the expense of the brilliant ones, and so on. So yeah, when it comes to physics, complete stagnation. When it comes to the cutting edge of physics, theoretical physics. Um, Other disciplines of science, I'm not sure there is stagnation as such, especially applied sciences, applied physics. There's quantum technologies that are quantum computing is becoming a thing now. Obviously, there is significant advancement happening there. We have artificial intelligence, which is growing in leaps and bounds, nanotechnology, whatnot. So applied sciences are doing well, but the bleeding edge of science, the cutting edge of science, which is theoretical physics, which is about our understanding of the universe, is there's no progress there. There are these gigantic mysteries sitting out there that we aren't able to, uh, make any progress on. So that is the situation. Okay. Okay, Inia says, why are the international media and some Indian YouTubers mocking the luxurious Ambani wedding ceremony? You said that money is power, then why the media are not in their favor? I have never said money is power. I have said the opposite. Money cannot buy you power, but power can buy you more money. Please pay attention. Okay, money cannot buy you power. You may have as much money as you can imagine. It can't buy you power. But if you are powerful, you can acquire as much money as you want. That's how it works. Now, the main question you're asking is, why has the international media and some Indian YouTubers, why have they been mocking the luxurious wedding ceremony? Because they're jealous. Because they don't like to see anyone succeed. The Ambanis, if they have succeeded and become so wealthy, well, they have done it through their hard work and their abilities, right? They haven't stolen anyone's money. There is this view in India that for someone to get rich, so others need to get poor. Why do people see the world that way? When you become wealthy, when you become rich, you create more wealth for others. You generate employment for thousands of people. Why don't you see it that way? This wedding, in which they spent, I don't know how many millions of dollars, imagine how much employment this wedding ceremony generated. It must have generated so much employment, so many purchase orders, so many staff must have come, so many people must have come to cater for this or that or whatever. So much employment and business must have been generated. And the Ambanis, if they spent, let's say, $100 million, I'm just assuming, I have no idea how much they spent, okay, but assume hypothetically they spent $100 million. That money went here, there, everywhere into various people's businesses, right? Isn't that good for the economy? I just don't get these people, these narrow minded people. They hate wealth and prosperity. They want everyone to remain poor. I think we should celebrate people who succeed and become rich, because they've done so through their own hard work and their talent and their merit, their sweat and blood and tears. They haven't stolen anyone's money. So, yeah, it's just jealousy. It's just jealousy that mediocre people have against the ones who are truly capable. I would say we should be happy that such things are happening in India. I'm glad. Dungar Singh Chauhan says, you said that the Japanese people are not aware of them being proxies or a colony of the US. How can this be possible? They are well connected to the outside world through social media. Please clarify. Tell me something. How many people, apart from me, say this openly that Japan is under US colonization, under US military occupation? If you look at the world's media, if you look at BBC, CNN, they portray Japan as a democracy, right? Because you have elections and you have prime ministers who come to office, and then there are coalitions, and then they lose power, and then somebody else is elected. There's a wonderful, vibrant democratic process happening, right? In Japan. That's how Japan is portrayed. Japan is portrayed as this big uh, economic power, which is now stagnating, obviously, and so on. And the Bank of Japan apparently is responsible for that. But nobody ever mentions the fact there are more than 130 US permanent military bases on Japanese territory. Who mentions that? And some Japanese will be aware of it because, see, the thing about Japan is that the Americans have turned Japan into Disneyland, into their place where they go for vacation. So at any given point in time in Japan, there are tens of thousands of Americans on vacation. And there are soldiers also, okay, because there are so many military bases. But the way it is portrayed is that these are joint operations between the US and Japan. And the US and Japan are close treaty allies because they have signed treaties, unfortunately. Okay, alliance. So the treaties are worded in such a manner that makes it look like these are alliance. This is an alliance, and the Japanese government is willingly asking the Americans to set up military bases on Japanese soil to protect Japan. So the language that has been used in all these treaties and all that is such that it looks like it's an alliance and not an occupation. And that's what is taught to the Japanese people, and that's what is told to the whole world. So forget about the Japanese. If you ask people from other countries, is anyone aware that the Americans are occupying Japan? Nobody sees it that way. And because there is no brutality, there are no atrocities on the Japanese people, so it's not visible at all. It's only in Okinawa that the Japanese people complain about the tremendously heavy occupation of the island. And of course, the American GIs there have been doing certain things again to the population, which is kind of, you can look upon it as atrocities. So it's in Okinawa that a little bit of protesting has been happening, but apart from that, nowhere else. So because of this overall situation, it's very well choreographed, very well managed, that nobody understands what's really happening. Even Italy is under US occupation. Do you know that? Does any Italian ever say that anywhere in the world, that our nation is under US occupation? Does any German say? Is any German aware of the fact that they are under US occupation? Nobody is aware, because their own government, their own media, their own education system is obfuscating the truth. So yeah, that's how it is. It is very much possible that people are not aware of what's happening to them. Even in India, we don't know that we are colonized. We are still colonized. How can this be possible? That no Indian knows that they are mentally colonized. Of course, it's possible. Of course, it's true. All right. Okay. Shall I take one more question, perhaps? Arka Manna says, what's your views on South Korea's recent robot suicide news? I haven't seen this news. Robot suicide? Really? A robot committed suicide? But robots aren't alive, right? They're just machines. I don't know. I'll have to look it up. I was not aware of this. Robot suicide. Why did it commit suicide? Shall I look it up quickly? Let me look it up. And let's put that on the screen. Robot suicide. That's weird. South Korea robot news. What happened? Robot suicide. Robot civil servant in South Korea was found unresponsive at the bottom of a stairwell. Commit suicide because it was what? It was made to do a lot of work, really? Found shattered at the blah 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 blah, etc. Look, I don't know. Maybe the media is making a mountain out of a molehill. Maybe the robot had an accident and it fell down or whatever, and the media is saying it's a suicide. You know, the term Big Bang was coined by the media. Okay, it wasn't coined by any physicist. So the media has this habit of blowing things out of proportion. I will read this in detail, and if it's really interesting, I'll speak about it again. So I don't have any views right now because I've just seen the news. I've seen it here in this question, but I'll check it out. Okay. Um, uh, is there any other question I can take? Um, Uma Maheshwari. Okay, this is the last question for today. Physics question. Uma Maheshwari says, "What is tunneling effect, and can we go subatomic if we really reduce the size of an atom, if not the space between them?" Uh, you can't reduce the size of an atom. It's simply unphysical to do that. Okay, there is no way you can do it. The laws of physics don't allow that to happen. Everything, all fundamental particles, subatomic particles have certain sizes and certain things, so you can't mess with that. Okay, so you can't go subatomic. Now, what's the tunneling effect? Look, there's a wall behind me. If I throw a ball at the wall, what's going to happen? It's going to hit the wall and bounce back, right? So that's how the normal world behaves. If I throw something at the TV screen behind me, it's going to bounce off the TV screen and come back to me, right? A ball, let's say. But in the quantum world, what's the quantum world? It is the ultra microscopic world. Okay, look at this microphone, the foam over here. You go deep into it, you go to the atomic level. That's the quantum world. That's the quantum domain of the world we inhabit. So everything that we see, all the light, all the physical properties of everything we are familiar with, all of that emerges from the ultra microscopic level, and that's the quantum level. At the quantum level, the laws of physics are extremely different. So if you have a wall and if you have a particle going hitting the wall, there is a non-zero probability that the particle will just go through the wall, tunnel through it, and that is quantum tunneling. That's the tunneling effect. And you can measure the probability of a particle tunneling through a barrier. And when you start learning quantum mechanics, the ABCs of quantum mechanics, that's the exercises you do, problems, tunneling, potentials and tunneling and all that. So that is the tunneling effect. In the quantum world, a quantum tennis ball can actually pass through a quantum wall. That's how weird the quantum world is. And it gives rise to the world that we are familiar with. So that is the tunneling effect. All right, ladies, gentlemen, friends, thank you so much for all your questions. Was great. Okay, Kostov is saying bookshelf tour will happen soon. I'm in the process of rearranging everything. It'll happen soon. Thank you for the reminder. So thank you so much for all your questions. It was great to be back live amongst all of you. And the next episode is tomorrow, in which I will take questions that you've asked in the comments and also some live questions. So until tomorrow, 22 hours from now, I'll take your leave and I'll see you very soon. Thank you so much for your viewership, for your questions, and don't forget to keep raising your standards. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Bye.